Throughout her career, Michelle Moaney, founder and director of Every Voice Counts Rehabilitation Services, often saw the mental health problems are sometimes overlooked and the number of people who suffer in silence is underestimated. This is where she comes in. She started this amazing company, Every Voice Counts Rehabilitation Services. We're going to go in depth into what it does for many people on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. But even if you're not on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, please tune in and stay tuned because Michelle has something to offer that is a blueprint for helping people around the country and, dare I say, around the world. And more importantly, this little known fact for my audience, Michelle Moaney is my first cousin. This conversation with Brian is going to be very special, heartfelt, and hopefully enlightening for people who are looking to help others in support of making our world a better place. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome to a conversation with Brian, my dear cousin, Michelle Moaney. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Me, Brian.
It is great to see you. I have to tell you that I've been, thinking about having you on for a long time, and I know that you are like, no, but I think your story and what you've done on the Eastern Shore with your organization, that story needs to be told. But at the beginning of each one of my shows, Michelle, what I do is I ask my guests to talk a little bit about their personal journey, their professional story, just so my audience gets to know you a little bit. So who is Michelle Moaney?
Well, again, Brian, thank you for having me. And I know you and I have talked several times because, I've read your books. I've been so intrigued because I know that this is something I'd like to present to our kids here on the shore. But what happened with me was that I did 31 years at the Department of Social Services, and being there as a child support supervisor, I just knew when I retired, I just asked God, I said, God, there's still people that are in need. I said, point me in the direction that I can continue to help without the stigma of social services, because
Sure.
I knew sometimes that, people come into the social service office and they'll say, oh, if I tell her this, she's going to tell my case manager this. So there's so many things that the client hides from us when they come to see us as a supervisor of child support. So when I talked to God, I was like, all right, let me be a life coach. So I went back to school to become a life coach. But what I found out quickly was the population that I was serving as a life coach really didn't have the means to pay for a life coach.
Okay.
So I thought, okay, I'm 2 years of doing this and not getting paid. My bookkeeper wasn't happy. She said, Michelle, find something else.
Right.
So I went searching again, and the closest that I could come up to was when I was talking with the state about PRP. And I didn't know that term myself, which is a psychiatric rehab provider.
Okay.
And what that does is it allows the person to work with a client that's seeing a therapist, because that's been the hardest challenge for me taking on this job, because people don't like that title. Either they don't like it or they don't know what it is. And
Right.
so I say, I'm a PRP worker or a psychiatric worker. They're like, oh, what's that?
Yeah.
And then I said, I'm a case manager. And then it settles them down a little bit, because, when you work with people, you don't want to throw out terms that they don't know, because that clearly causes that wedge.
Well, it does, because what happens is it puts people on a different plane, right? Like you throw out this term and they don't know it, so they don't think they're as smart. And so you want to make sure that you're on the same page. That's always been my passion, Michelle. Using acronyms, I hate that because a lot of times people use acronyms. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And sometimes earlier in my career, I'd be afraid to ask because I didn't want them thinking that I wasn't very smart.
Absolutely. Well, same with me. And I was thinking, oh, that's a big word to share with my clients. So I try to, when I see them, I try to say, remember to tell people I'm your case manager.
Right.
You don't have to worry about that. And that psychiatric word really hurt us, really hurts.
Yeah, they're just
Because
to that, right? And I mean, it's gotten better today, but it's still a stigma because
it,
people think something's wrong, and we all have mental health. We all need that support at some point.
that's what I tell my clients when I do my presentations around the county. I always say, tell me what a person that has mental health issues look like. And they always describe somebody that's like out there,
Right.
somebody that's holding a sign saying I'm homeless. And I said, I look at them and show my face. I said, I've had mental health issues since I was a little girl. I always worried about anxiety. I fought anxiety and depression. And it was just the fact that, like I didn't understand when my dad was in the military, he was always gone. And
Yeah.
every time he would go out to sea, I got sad. I was really sad and I was just depressed about it. So that just came with me the
Sure.
entire time I grew up. So I thought, what better person to explain or talk about mental health than me, because I know how it feels. I know what it feels to live with depression. I know what it feels to live with anxiety. So, when I say that to people, they look at me, but it's true, and whether we want to hide it or not, I tell people all the time when I watched that Wendy Williams series, I thought, there's a lot of Wendy Williams in a lot of us, that we want to hide. But when we unveil those cupboards, it's like freedom,
Yeah.
because we are who we are. God created us for a reason. And I hope that, the anxiety and the depression that I've been through all these years, when clients come in and I tell them that, it seems like it frees them up to tell me the truth. They're like, well, let me tell you this. And it opens up so many doors.
Well, because I think what it does for me in listening to you, and I think one is very courageous, but two, it puts a face on it, right? And it's like, oh, this is just a normal person that I'm talking to. If she's going through this, then probably most people, and I have to be honest, Michelle, I've gone through depression and I've talked about it. I interviewed one of my former teammates, Daryl Webster, who went through depression as well, and he wrote a book. I think I'm going crazy, and he talks about mental health issues and especially the stigma that men go through because you don't want to talk about it as a man, but we all go through times where we have ups and downs and sometimes we just don't know how to get out of it, and we need to ask for help because we don't know how to get out of this dark space or this stressful space. So it's really important for us now and to be able to look at somebody and say, oh, they've been through it. They can help me go through what I'm going through right now. And so I think that's courageous of you of what you're doing in your organization.
Thank thank you so much. And I just feel like, it's my opportunity before God calls me home to be able to give back. I want to give back when people come through the door, they know that, it's a safe space here, they're free. And what I've tried to do, because I saw that you showed some pictures of our website.
Yeah.
When I find that there's problems when clients come in, I go after the resources that we need to help them. And a lot of our clients come with a lot of, background, criminal background. They have a lot on their background that, they're not proud of,
Sure.
and I have to say, before I can go out and advocate for you to get jobs, to get housing, we've got to figure out where this came from. How do we clear it up? And where do we go from here? Because I like that word accountability. I don't ever want my audience, the people that I'm advocating for, to feel like, Michelle says, hey, I don't have to be accountable for my blemishes. Well, we do. We
Sure.
have to get out there. So I've hired a legal consultant and she's really good because her and I worked together with the child support cases. She was the judge at the time and I was the
Oh,
supervisor.
wow.
So now Joanna Master Asparagus. She works with us. So what happens is when the people come in and they have problems, or case shows that they've got a lot of legal problems, they go right into her office. So she tells me what we can do, what we
Sure.
can't do, how we can clear some of this up. And it makes it so much nicer, because then when I present their package to an employer, I
Right.
can say, this is what happened, but this is where we're going. And employers like to hear that, because employers are giving us a chance now, where when I first started 5 years ago, if I told them criminal, they shut me down right away. Well,
Yeah.
now they're giving me an opportunity to tell my story, which makes it much nicer.
Well, I love that you're being upfront. I mean, and I think that's important, like you said, that you give it to the judge and make sure they're held accountable, but you're being transparent with those employers. And that shows that you're honest and that you're not trying to hide something. And so you're like, okay, this is, something they may have done in the past. How do we move forward? And we all have done things in the past, right? And so it's like, how do we help people not, have that mark as who they are? It's just something that they made, a mistake that they made. And now how do we move forward to help you move and have a productive life?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hey, let's just go back a little bit, because we've talked about your organization a little bit. Every voice counts. Can you tell me, exactly when it's? I mean, you said that a little bit about how you got started and why you got started. Can you just kind of walk us through, because it's not an easy thing to start an organization from scratch. And how did you, one, come up with the name, but how did you start to, 5 years ago, did you start with a group of people like you have on your website, or was it just you and one or other person, and then you grew? I mean, what did it look like in terms of your evolution?
Well, you asked that question, Brian, and the first building that we started out, I think to myself, there's so many tears in that building. I probably could have started an ocean, because I started this all by myself, and it was really, really hard. And the funny thing is, because I talked with my brother before I got started, because
Uh-huh.
he's part of our business now, but he said to me, he said, Michelle, are you sure you want to do this at your age and the way life is going right now? And I thought, I don't know. So my family, definitely, they weren't on board with this ideal, because they knew that it meant a lot of work.
Yeah.
It really did. And when you first start out, I tell people all the time, I said, you feel like you're on an island all by yourself, because
Yeah.
I came from government, being in the government, where
Mhm.
you had a director, and you knew where to go to ask your questions. You knew
Right.
what to do when the clients weren't happy. You had somebody, you had a team. But when you start a business, um,
Yep.
and I always think to myself, I said, that daggone Steve Harvey, he said that, when you want to start a business, you just jump. But Steve, it's more than that, because it has taken me, oh, so long to sort of get where I needed to get. And with me, I just went through accreditation, and I know for every agency that's a little different. But what happens is, a nonprofit organization, before you even get started, they have to come in and they have to make sure all of your policies are right. They have to make sure you're doing what you say. Just like when you go to a doctor's office, or the hospital, I'm always looking at for that sign that says we're accredited.
Oh
Because
yeah, right. Yeah.
when I see that, I know they've gone through some stuff, so they're going to
Yeah.
be right by you. So to see that sign, it means an awful lot, because the first year when I started my business,
Hmm.
I only got a 1 year certification. So when they came to me, they were like, "Oh, there's a lot of stuff missing here," because on the average, it's 1,500 policies that you have to have, standards that you've got to meet. And of those 1,500, I didn't have a lot of them. I mean, she said the office is nice because they like Easton when they come down, because we've always been near the Tidewater. We had our first office there. We're not far from the Tidewater now. But they would always say your office is nice and you do well with your clients, but that policy stuff was what was holding me back.
Sure.
we brought on a couple more people, and those couple more people were able to take part of the policy, because when I did accreditation for the government, we always had a team.
Of course.
So I started and had to do it alone.
Yeah.
It was very lonely, to say the least. It
Yeah.
was a lot of work. There were times that I honestly, Brian, thought, oh God, maybe my family's right. This is a lot. But I had like a really close friend that every time, for some reason, that I was like, you know what, I'm throwing in the towel, she would call me. And I always figured, she was my guardian angel,
Yeah.
because he would always call and say, oh, no, you're not. And I'm thinking, oh, yes, I am. And she was like, pick up that pen and start again. And you need that in life, Brian. I
Yeah.
just think with me, I always try to have people in my corner that can say, hey, Michelle, it's not going to be like this forever. It's
Yeah.
not going to be like this forever. So having her to do that along the way, kept me focused. But it was an awful lot. But when accreditation came back that year, after I only got the 1 year certification, I got a 3 year, which gave me a little bit of time to grow,
Sure.
to capture what we needed to do about policy. Because once again, when you start a PRP office, well, as you all know, every business is sort of unique because it has that person's personality with them.
Sure.
Because I had, before I started to think about this business, I had gone back to one of the local offices in Easton, and I remember telling them I had all these ideas that I wanted to do for the community. And they were like, those are your ideals, not our ideals. So you either stick with our ideals or go. And I thought, oh, it's time to go,
Yeah.
because you do have your own ideals. I
Sure.
knew what I wanted to bring to the community. I knew what was, I didn't know everything, and truly I don't. I like our surveys, because we do customer satisfaction surveys when our
Okay.
clients
Yeah.
come in, and we try to say, hey, what are we missing? Because those are our customers. So,
Sure.
they tell us, we think that we know everything, because we say, oh, we run in a business. But with me, I'm always open. I'm listening, because I want to grow. I want to be there for them. I want them to know, hey, I run the operation, but I need your input to help it grow, to make it, community friendly, so that, when people come in here, they're like, oh, Miss Michelle will help you. And, maybe I don't know what psychiatric rehab means, but I just know that it means that, she's a person, that she cares, and she's going to do her best to help, you
You know,
know.
it's interesting because just listening to you, and when you talk about, you were the person who started this and you felt on an island, and a lot of times when people are successful, there's a couple things that stood out to me. One is your passion. This is yours. This is your baby. You care deeply because this is personal to you. And you want other people to be successful because you have gone through some of the things that they've gone through. And then the second piece is, and this is where you're humble and you're transparent, is that you don't have to know everything, right? Like you talked about when you were with the state, different offices or different people knew different pieces of the business. And so you're hiring people to be those experts. You do need a team. Although this is your passion, you need people around you that are experts or knowledgeable or experienced in those different areas to help your team grow, to help your business flourish.
Absolutely.
So, are there any, as we just kind of delve into, some of the things that happen in your business, are there any, and I don't want you to use names, but are there any, particular success stories that you can kind of talk to, or people that who have come in and they weren't sure whether, your services would be right for them, but you were able to connect them, and it doesn't have to be like anything like grand. It could be, oh, we got them a job and they're working every day now. Are there any stories that you can point to?
There's a few, but like when I try to tell people, when I say this is who we are, because I go back to COVID, because I have a guy that's still with us, but anyway, he has spent his last 20 years, he's been incarcerated, um, working now, doing a great job. But basically, when he came out, COVID was here. And
Mm.
a lot of people didn't know what was going on with COVID, but and he's an older guy. And I never forget, it was like really early in the morning, and my phone's ringing because they have our numbers. They can call us 24/7 with the emergencies that they need help on. But anyway, he was at the post office and he kept saying to me, he was like, Michelle, he was like, there's this man at the post office keeps saying, give me my space, give me my space. It was an older guy. And he said, I don't know why. He said, I'm getting ready to punch him in the face. And I said, no, you're not. I said, I want you to go outside of the post office and call me. So he goes outside and he calls me. I said, Jim, I said, it's called COVID. I said, what's going on is everybody needs to be 6 feet apart. And I said, and you're too close to him at this point. And he's thinking because you're not following the rules, he's nervous. And he was like, well, why didn't he just say that? And I just had to explain to him, you have to understand that things have changed in the world. It's not like it was, 20
Right.
years ago. So just that little interaction with him, when he said, why didn't the man just tell me? I would have listened to him, because he thought he needed to
Yeah.
fight the man. So those are the kind of things that we have to introduce to people, because if they don't know, they just don't know.
I mean,
Um,
some basic social cues and social skills that people may not, like you said, he's been away for 20 years, and that's just the world has changed. So that's something that's a beautiful story, because it's like something so small could have turned into a huge interaction, but you were there to actually help that person out of that situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what we see a lot of times. We've had people that when they've come out from being incarcerated, they don't even know how to use, they didn't know how to use the cell phone. Like the cell phone was foreign to them. And so we're like, okay, let us sit down, let us teach you about the cell phone. It's so much that people don't know. And a lot of times, because I could tell, I knew this from back at social services day. Like a client will come in and you'll say they have a long list from maybe like the courts. And I'm like, well, what is this? And, clearly they don't understand, and they'll say, I don't know. And then they hand it over to you. But the fact that, they're willing to say, I don't know, because if you don't know, you just don't know. And then I'll read through it and I was like, oh, you belong in court this day, you need to do this. And their eyes are all big looking at me like, oh, I didn't know all that. But see, that's what PRP does, because when we go with the client, so if I take my client to the doctor's office, I'm sitting there the whole time taking notes on what the doctor is saying. And then as we're riding home in the car, I said, so tell me what the doctor said that you have and what you should do. I don't know. And so I said, well, what I need you to do next time, I have the notebook this time. Next time you're going to write the notes, and then we'll talk about the notes, because we want it so that we teach, we train, so that you understand when
You
we're not.
empower them, you give
Ex-
them, and so they might not know, but you're not gonna, it's kind of like, again, it's like this gradual release of giving them their power back. They may not know how, but you're gonna say, I'm not gonna be holding your hand the whole time. I'm gonna start with, okay, this is how we do it, and then I'm gonna release it to you so you can really take ownership of your life.
Exactly. Exactly. And we do that with the kids too, because the program starts at age 5. So with the little kids, what we do is we bring them in. Like last night, we have group every night. Well, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And there's different kids that come in, because we serve the whole shore. We don't just serve Easton. We
Right.
pick every county that we go into, and we're hoping as we get bigger, we'll have a satellite in each county. But what we do is we bring them in, they have dinner, and then after we have dinner, we have an activity that we do. So that activity, based on what the therapist told us, maybe therapist saying, oh, they don't know how to sit still, because that's what a lot of our kids, they're up and down, up and down. So we do an activity that we're training them. Hey, at certain times of the day,
Yeah.
you need to, when the teacher says sit down, there's times to run around and play, but let's learn what it looks like to sit down. And we have them, we're trying to look for a bigger spot right now because when they come to us, it is time for them to burn some energy off. That's why we feed them first. But it just gives them an opportunity. And then, like if they say they've had a bad day, we have a volunteer that comes in. He may take them in the back and says, what does a bad day look like? What happened? How could we have changed this bad day? And when they leave us at, an hour later, their faces are just as happy. I remember there was one child that kept telling me, he kept saying that he was nervous because his mom left him home in the morning. And I was like, oh, did you tell your mom? He said, I told her, but she's not listening. So what we were able to do is we were able to work with mom so that mom now has somebody to come in the house in the
Oh,
mornings before
perfect.
he goes to school and just sits there with them. So it's just been nice that they feel like, hey, I can tell Miss Michelle or tell her group things and something's gonna happen. My mom's not gonna get mad at me,
Right.
but something's gonna happen.
Where did you get this way about you where you don't judge people? Because I think that's really important for people to open up, um, is not feeling judged. And so these people feel, kids and adults seem like they feel comfortable sharing with you and your staff, about them or situations, and they aren't going to be looked down upon. Where'd you get that from? Is that just
Well,
who you are?
Well, I think what happened with me, I mean, I've always been, how in life you always think to yourself, you weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth. And I always felt like that could have been me because of, like I probably was the last in line in school. I probably, just because I was always, like I said, worrying about anxiety a lot of times. But
Yeah.
I always felt like, people are going to be people, and my kids are the same way. Like we always go after the underdog when we're looking at sports because my son loves sports, and when we're always like we always pick the underdog to get out
Right.
there and win. So it's been the same way with the job, and I think by being in child support, I've honestly, Brian, I've had people throw shoes at me. I try to think, I was like, God, what was my worst experience there? And I remember this guy said, you've taken everything else. And then he took his shoes off and threw them at me. I thought, okay, Mr. So and so, let's start over again. But the one thing about me that, like I always have known how to settle people down. And I think it's because they know that I'm not going to judge them. I always say, it's not my job. It's God's job. It's not my job to judge you. It's only my job to present what you told me. And I like the fact that a lot of times, because incidents come about, I think, as when people come in and everybody's starting to yell and it gets louder and louder and louder. I try to be just the opposite. I try to like settle them down and talk to them and let them know, like, once again, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help. And when you tell people that you're here to help without judging them, I think it takes off a lot of that negativity that they're coming in the door with, like, oh, I've got to defend myself. And I've got to, if she said something I don't like, how can I jump back at her? But I'm not going to do that. So it seems to settle them down.
I think a lot of times people come in defensive because they've spent their life on high alert because of whatever situations, and there's not a judgment, whatever situations have, and experiences that they've had, they're constantly, in like, fight or flight. And if
Yes,
you are like, okay, I'm gonna be calm and I'm just gonna listen and I'm not gonna match your energy, then they feel like they can be heard.
you're absolutely right.
Hey, on your website, you talk about services and, developmental crisis management, life skills training, assistance with scheduling and coordinating appointments, transportations to and from doctors, coordinating, treatment with therapists. These seem like just a total wraparound services for everything that, anybody who, needs support needs. When you started to develop these services, at the beginning, did you have just one or two, or did you start with all those services and it was just, oh, I'm just trying to figure out because of my experience through social services, I have contacts, I can help them, or is it, I just started with a few and then I added some on?
Well, Brian, for PRP, tell us what we're supposed to do.
Mhm.
But if you talk to anybody, they'll say, Michelle, your organization's more than just the normal PRP. And we are. And I think the reason why is because I come with 31 years of DSS experience, the Department of Social Services,
Right.
first, the last 5 years with mental health. So combining that together, because with Department of Social Services, we've never said no to people. We've always had to go out and find resources. So
Sure.
that's my mindset when the clients come in. I always think, we're not going to say no. And then what you have on the mental health side is there's a lot of needs that they come with. And sometimes we can't always fulfill all of those needs. And that's another reason why I brought in a team, because they have to stop me sometimes, because if I had my way, I think I take everybody home and make sure everybody's taken care of. But my team says, hey, Michelle, that's not in the policy. So
Right.
when you overstep your bounds, you can absolutely get in trouble. So I need those people around me to say, hey, we can't do everything. But the client knows for the most part, when they come through the door, that's why we just recently launched a nonprofit, which is called All About Your Image. And All About Your Image is listed on our website too. And what that is, it's a nonprofit because we are for profit, meaning that we bill Medicaid. Medicaid
Right.
only are our clients, which means not a dime ever comes out of the client's pocket.
Mhm.
But with PRP, we've never done the agencies that I had to train at, we've never done as much as our agency does. So I had to look for money to say, okay, if we're going to help you with housing, if we're going to put you in a house, if we're going to, fill your apartment up with pots and pans, if we're going to help pay your rent, if we're going to give you gas money. So this nonprofit side of the business is supposed to help with that. So we're trying to launch that. And what we really want to do is we've targeted the kids that are between the ages of like 16 to 25, because that's a population as well that we target that could get lost.
Sure.
Because what that population does is, they're like, we really don't need your help at this point. Let us go out and do it.
Right.
But when they go out and do it and somehow get themselves into that long list of trouble, because at this point you're no longer underage, you are of age, that if you start to do little silly things, maybe like, pull a little BB gun out and try to shoot it, and, not to hurt anybody, but you pulled it out.
Right.
Well, at the age of 18, that's serious.
Yeah.
So we're trying to keep that population with us so that we can have other men that they can talk with that can say, hey, before you try to do this, let me tell you about some of the things that I've been through, that has got me into where I am, that could prevent you from walking down this same dark road.
Sure. Sure. Hey, this has been great. You are amazing. I am
Well, thank
just so
you.
honored that you were able to come on and really share your passion and share your organization. How do you said you build Medicaid? How if somebody wants to get services from Every Voice Counts, what is the process for them to go through to do that?
What they do is they can contact our office, they can contact their therapist. And what we say is if they don't have a therapist, they're more than willing, if they're willing, they can come into our office, because we have a therapist that works with us that we can refer them to, because they have to be willing to go to therapy. A client couldn't just walk off the street, for our for-profit side and say, hey, can you start helping me? We
Right.
would have to say, are you willing to see a therapist? And then we, refer them to the therapist. The therapist then fills out a referral, which is on our website. They fill that referral out. We submit it to Medicaid, and once we get approved, we become their case managers and we start our services with them.
And you said that you're just not for the eastern area, what are the other areas that you work or support on the Eastern Shore? And you said you want to start branching out with offices in other areas. Is,
Yes.
is Easton just right now the place where you have your office? But can other people or other counties access that support?
Absolutely. I just went to Dorchester and did a presentation over there at the board office for their school and their kids. So we are trying just to go to each area. On the Eastern Shore, we have um, Caroline County, we have Dorchester County, we have Queen Anne's County.
Yeah.
And as far as Wycomico County, and I think that's your area down in Salisbury,
Yes, sir.
that we're trying to branch into as well. So the whole shore. Now we have some clients that are also in the Annapolis area as well, which is across the bridge, because as long as a client is a Medicaid recipient, that's Maryland, we
Right.
can we can work with them. So it's not a problem at all. It's just the fact, the further we get, it's going to take us a little bit longer. But as our population grows in Annapolis, we'll be able to hire somebody in the Annapolis area. So that's why we're just trying to put our names out there, explain to people what PRP is so
Yeah.
that we can grow.
And this, I know at the beginning or kind of in the middle of our conversation, you said that your family was kind of, nervous about you starting and doing this, but it's kind of become a family business. I see some names on that website who are family.
Absolutely. Well, my son's a PRP because he's just like me. I love the adults because I just have a passion for the adults. He has a passion for the kids. I mean,
Yeah.
if he could, because he's run a basketball team his entire life, but we've always had kids downstairs that I have to step over in the morning because, they played games all night long. Um, and then my daughter's a therapist, so she is able to support us with her expertise. So now, and then my brother is, because he's run a company for like 26 years, he definitely has that background in office management. So
Yeah.
just having them, along with the team that I have, which have been people that I've worked with through the past, we just honestly, we call ourselves a big family. We sit here together, we have our meetings, we talk about our clients. In the middle of the night, they're calling me saying, this client did this, and we just feel like, hey, we're here to serve, and that's what we're gonna do.
Yeah. You are amazing. I just think about, you know, how you think about things like when you were little, like smells or sounds, and it brings you back to kind of when you were little. And one of the things that brought me back to, when I was little or younger was, us going to the farm and Granny cooking pancakes and bacon, and me for some reason loving King syrup. I don't remember. I don't know why that brought me back, but it just brought me back with all the cousins being around and stuff, and just having those good times. But I also, again, for the audience who didn't know, Michelle and I are cousins. My mom and Michelle's dearly departed mom, my aunt Jean, were sisters. And this idea of family and our family being helpers, I just see that, like, people in our family being helpers. And I think that's just something that was nurtured in us because um, it was modeled for us,
Absolutely.
you know.
Absolutely. And I still think about that. I think about, when I think about you, I think about all the pictures that, we've taken from the farm, we can look at over these days. But the one thing, when I meet people down in Salisbury area, I always say, do you know the Butlers? And there has not been a time yet that people have said to me, no, everybody either knows you, your mom, or Paul, or Monica. It's like, they know the Butlers. The Butlers are just known for Salisbury, and it just, it makes me proud, because when I go down there, it's like you guys have already opened the door for me to present to people, because when they say, you guys, truly, you guys have been models down in Salisbury for so many people, and you continue to be models, which I
I,
love.
I appreciate that. Hey, Michelle, at the end of my podcast, and I think I shared this at Uncle Paul's funeral. I use this old African proverb, "As I go, I am wearing you," and it really just talks about all the people who have helped me along the way. Community members, my parents, my family, my brothers and sisters, cousins, just teachers, everybody who has helped me along the way. I am wearing. And so when you see Brian Butler, it really is not you seeing Brian Butler, it's seeing all the people who have poured into him to help him be who he is today, successes and failures, because I've failed a lot, but because of those people, I know that persistence and just getting up again and trying again is really important. And so
I love
of course, I am wearing you, Michelle. It's that's without saying. But who are you wearing? Who are some of the people who have been important in your trajectory to help you, when you had some of your lowest moments, or even when you're having some of your great moments? Who are some of the people who have helped you along the way that you think we should know that you're wearing?
Well, like you said, absolutely. I'm going to say your mom. She's probably, your mom has, with my grandkids, because the one thing about family when we were growing up, we knew each other. We definitely knew each other because it was small, and, we all, like all the sisters would bring the kids together and we would always be together. But now with the kids, it's almost like our families have spread out, they know of, but it's not the
It's
fact of
different.
knowing
Yeah,
with,
yeah,
because we all grew up together.
yeah.
So I think about Aunt Holly because family members, everybody talks about Aunt Holly, and it's because she's so amazing. She's the age that she is, the young age that she is, she's still at every basketball game. Because I thought, you know what, I'm gonna write a letter to on Facebook just to the community and Salisbury, just to tell them how blessed they are, to have somebody that supports them like that. And it's just, she loves Y High. She loves the school.
She
She loves
bleeds Fly High Sports. Yeah.
she does. And I think of her because she's my mom's not here anymore, rest her soul. But I still, when I look at her highly, I think of my mom. My mom was, and I just, before my mom left, she kept asking me all the time. I tell people this all the time. My mom kept saying, Michelle, have you gotten paid yet? Because she knew I started this for-profit business, and it takes forever to get paid when you first start your business. And I kept, every time she would ask me, I would tell her no, and her face would be so sad. And I kept thinking, oh my God, I got to make some money before my mom leaves this
Oh,
world. But I was able to tell her before she left here that we finally, the business had finally started making money. But with my mom's sisters and her the men as well in my mom's family, I think I wear them. I wear my grandparents because they just the work ethics that they had. My grandmother. I just remember like so much of her out there. Like washing clothes.
yeah,
When we would pick potatoes out on the farm, and it just reminds me, and even to this day, when my grandson went back to St. Peter and Paul, I said to him, he tried a year there, and I said, do well, because my aunt, she loved that school. Our Betty loved St. Peter and Paul. She loved all the members of the school. So, there's just so many people that have poured into me, like my family, even though they said, hey, Michelle, maybe you shouldn't do this at your age. But I was like, no, it's something I have to do. So
yeah,
I went on, and, when accreditation came the other day, I told them, I didn't even say anything. I just said, accreditation's coming. They all came in and just started, helping me like clean
yeah,
up and get organized, and I thought, well, that just goes to show, even though in life, when sometimes your family members say, hey, maybe you shouldn't, once they see the determination in you, they
yeah,
jump on board and do what they have to do. And, when I look at your books, and I said, God, look at all this that Brian's doing. It's just wonderful. It's just, in Charlotta, it's so many family members that I see throughout the day that you can turn on Facebook, and when you guys are giving back, it just makes me feel like, hey, there's a part of me on Brian's podcast, that Brian's representing me. It's a part when Charlotta is doing surgery for people. It's a part of me. We've just so intertwined together as a family, and I think that's what keeps us so strong.
Yeah, that's beautifully said, Michelle. I mean, I couldn't have said it any better. You are a true inspiration. Your dedication to making, a positive impact in the lives of people who are facing, mental health challenges, your passion and your resilience, and your genuine commitment to creating a supporting environment through your company, Every Voice Counts. I mean, I love that title, Every Voice Counts Rehabilitation Service. It's clear that your vision and your tireless efforts for you and your team not only change the lives of the people that you're serving, but it's changing the community on the Eastern Shore. And I can't thank you enough for all that you're doing. You've been an inspiration to me. And I think we are, in our families, a lot of us are cut from the same cloth, because I think, we don't rest on our laurels, and we also don't think that we're better than anybody. Like me writing a book, I'm actually surprised sometimes, because I had a hard time, as you know, learning how to read. And so I'm not going to look down on anybody, because I want everybody to have the world open to them by learning how to read. And if it takes you longer, it takes you longer. But everybody has the capacity to do those things. Sometimes it just takes some people longer, or it takes them to do it in a different way. And so for me, it's just trying to open up worlds for every single child so they can have the lives that we have, right? And so I do appreciate you coming on. I am wearing you, cousin. And you did a great job. I know you said, oh, I'm a little bit nervous, but you were fantastic. When you talk about your passion, it just comes through.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, because I told my daughter when you first asked me, I said, I'm going to say no, I'm going to refuse, because I just thought all these things that were going to happen to me. And she said, Mom, you need to do this. So I was like, you're right.
Well, I'm glad that she convinced you, but it's just like having a conversation. You talking about your organization, you talking about your journey. That's what the people in my audience need to hear, and hopefully the people on the Eastern Shore, because we're going to post this on Facebook, on YouTube, on all the social media platforms. You were fantastic, and again, thank you for coming on. And
thank you as well.
I will talk to you very soon.
Okay. God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Subscribe to A Conversation with Brian on my YouTube channel and Spotify.